People who take walks at night. What's the scariest thing you've seen? During winter in a rural no cell service kind of area. Completely dark. No street lights nor anyone in sight. Temperatures were around 20 and it was snowing. I was walking my dog with a flashlight. Then I heard someone start screaming bloody murder. Flight or fight kicked in. It truly sounded like someone was being stabbed to death for what seemed like forever. I chose to find out what the heck was going on. What I found instead was beyond anything I expected. He was a 5-year-old boy wandering down the road all alone. All he was wearing were light flannel pants and a thin t-shirt. No shoes or hat. And screaming so loudly it echoed through the hills. I dropped my dog's leash and walked up to him slowly, gently and repeatedly telling him that I'm a mom and that he's going to be okay. I wrapped him into my arms and carried him to a neighbor's home to warm him by the fire and call for help. He was so lucky to have been found by you. There was a story near me a few winters back where a 2-year-old girl got out at night in their new house. Just started learning how to unlock doors. And she didn't know how to get back inside. A neighbor thought they heard crying and regretted not investigating further. The girl froze to death on the stairs behind their apartment. I almost got kidnapped near a train station. Some dude drove up to me hella quick and insisted that I was some missing Canadian child and that he'd take me home. Coincidentally, a motorcycle cop happened to drive by and immediately pulled over after I waved him down. He approached the guy in the car very aggressively and told him off. The cop didn't arrest the guy or anything. The guy apparently told the cop the same I thought he was a missing child story, but he did walk me over to the train station and stayed with me until the train actually arrived. What a nice dude, meaning the cop. One time I turned around to see what was behind me just out of intuition, and I saw someone step behind a tree rather quickly and try to hide from me. I stood there for a second to confirm this, then I speed walked home. Freaking creepy. Speed walked. I would have Usain bolted out of there. I'm an overnight security guard. One night I was watching cameras and saw someone underneath a grass tarp where some landscaping was taking place on our property. I was guessing this person had probably tried to stash something before they went into detox, which is next door to our property. I get over to the tarp and don't see the guy anywhere. So I start walking over the tarp and lifting it to look for any stashed items. Well, I ended up stepping on the poor homeless guy. Scared the crap out of me. He was cool though and we fist bumped and he went on his way. I worked night shift for 7 years. One night a young, thin blonde woman was walking down the street at 2 AM with no pants or underwear on and a button-up shirt open. I tried to ask if she needed help and she just stared forward, slowly walking staring forward. I called the police and they came and stood in front of her and she slowly walked into the cop's hand and stopped. I didn't stay and went back to work. I still think about her and what the frick was going on. I tell myself it was sleepwalking on Ambien or something, and that she wasn't just assaulted and in complete shock. I'll never know. But she was very pretty, and seemed well groomed. Was very strange. My old man casually walked across the lobby of a 5-star hotel naked as a jaybird on Ambien. One time I was walking around my relatively safe neighborhood with 2 of my friends after midnight. We were probably 16 at the time. This loud red truck speeds by us, which is normal for the road we were on. Then a few minutes later the same red truck drives by the opposite way going much slower. Again just a couple of minutes later he drives by but this time stops 100 or so feet away from us and just sits there. Realizing that this is not normal, we booked it through the yard to the next street over. For the next 20 or so minutes we see this truck creeping up and down the neighborhood while we hid behind some bushes, and when we finally thought he was gone, we booked it to my house. He turned the corner onto my road just as we were about to open my front door. A similar thing has happened to me while walking the dogs at 5:30 AM. I've had a few cars do this. I now carry mace in the morning and I always turn and walk toward the busier streets if I see a suspicious car. Lots of creepy people out there. Glad you and your friends are safe. Dead body on the side of the street with a sign around its neck saying I'm a cell phone thief. Don't be like me. This was maybe 20 years ago in Manila, Philippines. Found a guy who hanged himself in a park. Called 911 and answered some questions. Was a long night. I changed hung to hanged. Was up on a hill in the countryside at midnight when a man with a rifle came out of nowhere. ran right past me, and wasn't seen again. I went home shortly after that. Dang, these Civil War ghosts always running around. Almost 100% sure I witnessed a kidnapping. I was going to get my mail late at night while living in an apartment complex, and on the way back I noticed a woman in her pajamas surrounded by a few men right by a car. There was an argument and looked like they forced her in the car and drove off. I found her slipper nearby on the grass. I of course called the police and they came and I let them know what I saw, but I never found out what actually happened. What I thought was a body in the woods. And after a bit of back and forth on the phone with the police, I returned with a few helpful coppers to find a slightly miffed drunk person who'd had an argument with his missus. Living in a rural village, I was taking a late night walk with my GF, when suddenly we hear aloud what we thought was a human scream. Turned out it was a sheep. Jump scared us hard though. An old man who walked very aggressively, like Jason from Friday the 13th, but sped up. I was ready to run, but I walked past him and nothing happened. Put me on my toes, but holy crap, change your walking form, man. He's just built different. A 7-foot tall male brown kangaroo in the middle of the footpath. Buff as frick, just staring me down. You bet your butt I turned and went the other way. He just went about his business. There was news report a while ago about a super large and buff kangaroo that would beat up dog walkers. Safe to say that I'm not going to Australia anytime soon. Was out for a late walk in the rain. Always enjoy it because it's peaceful, smells great, quiet, and never see anyone. Walked off this trail back into the road and saw a big pile of garbage under a tarp at the end of the cul-de-sac the trail ends in. Got a creepy chill like that could be a dead body or something, and I'd never know, just got a weird feeling that snapped me out of my calm walk. Picked up the pace. About 500 yards away, parked car with a guy sitting there, in the dark, in the rain, like 11-ish, car off, just sitting there. Got super creeped out at this point and changed my route back to the main road and hurried home. Turns out it was a dead body someone had dumped under that tarp. Was under there for 4 days before someone investigated it. The guy in the car turned out to be just a random dude. Guy lives there and totally unrelated to the body. Still, took a few months off from my late night walks alone in the woods. A man on a bike passed me and he wore a jacket, shoes, and a hat, but no pants or underwear. At first I couldn't believe that I just saw his bare butt. They saw 2 moons that night. A couple years ago, I was at the start of a typical weekday night stroll. I was living in an apartment complex in Florida at the time, so it was the only opportune time to do so, without being completely drenched. The exact moment I was crossing the sidewalk adjacent to the entrance of said complex, I witnessed a middle-aged dude punch his wife's significant other in her face, in full view of me, and another passerby. The passerby called the cops. The dude was arrested. It wasn't a scary situation to my own well-being, but I did find the situation chilling. For one, how nonchalant the guy was in assaulting his wife so in public, and two, how both the abuser so were pleading for the cops not to be called. It was domestic abuse so normalized, it happened in full public, without any second thought rationale. There was one night where a car stopped up the road, a girl got out, yelled for help, then got back in and they drove off. I have no idea if it was serious or not, considering she got right back in the car. A dude was following me around for a solid 10 minutes in a car. When I confronted the guy, he was just an Uber person who was lost. Or so he said. I've never been afraid of the dark. Grew up in the countryside, where the nearest streetlight was 10 miles away, so I'm comfortable in dark places. So much so that I often take my dog for a walk at around midnight just because I like the peace and quiet of the night. I live in a city now, so something about the dark is just soothing to me. That being said, one of the scariest things I've ever experienced, I genuinely have no explanation for. Living in a city, I used to drive out 20-30 miles into the country to do some astrophotography. As I'm driving out one night, I see this guy walking at the side of the road with no lights, reflectors, and a big backpack. Didn't think much of it other than it being a little odd. 5 miles later, I see the same guy walking again. I haven't changed directions, turned, and I've been doing 50 miles per hour. As I drove past, he looked and waved at me. I was pretty spooked, but I drove on. I must be imagining things. It can't be the same guy. I get to my field in the middle of nowhere, park up and get the camera out, and turn off all the lights so my eyes adjust to the dark. All is going well, and for 30 minutes I'm content, and starting to relax. Suddenly I hear a rustling near the hedge by the road, crunching leaves, grass being kicked. It was footsteps. I immediately get a feeling of dread, like I'm in severe danger and something bad was going to happen. I grab my camera, toss it in the car, get in, lock the doors and turn on the headlights. When I turn out of the field, I pass where I heard the noise and saw fresh footprints in the mud but no sign of anyone. I race back home, driving double the speed limit, constantly checking my mirrors for anyone. I park up around the corner and wait in the car with the lights off for 30 minutes, watching. Nothing shows up. I get home, lock all the doors and sleep with a knife under my pillow that night. I honestly don't know what really happened that night, but part of me knows that creepy guy I passed on the road twice was in that field. Holy crap, I totally believe you. I just can't even fathom how someone could have walked that fast. That's nightmare fuel. 2 words. Rabbit squirrels. There was an outbreak of rabies in a squirrel population in my neighborhood my senior year of high school. My BF at the time lived about a 20-minute walk away and neither of us drove, so we frequently had to walk through rabbit squirrel territory. In the middle of the night, hearing them make noises like something out of a motherfucking zombie movie while skittering above you when it's too dark to see them is horrifying. 0/10 would not recommend. In college I would walk back from the library very late. One night I was walking back to my dorm and something told me to look up. On top of the parking garage there was a person glaring over looking like they were about to jump. I had no clue what to do, so I called the police. As soon as I looked back up they jumped to safety. I ran up the stairs to find them but couldn't. The police never found them either. Either way, I hope they are okay today. Over 25 years ago, I was walking in a park at night. It was pitch black in this park. No lighting, other than the moon and the stars on a beautiful autumn night. I couldn't see very well, but I knew the area, and was walking along the road, which ran parallel to a small river. The moonlight would bounce off the water, and all you would hear is the trickle from the slow running river and slight breeze in the trees. I loved those walks. That was until the one night, in the dead silence and pitch black, I distinctly hear a man's voice out of the woods say very clearly, "Young girls shouldn't go walking alone in the woods at night." I froze. I looked in the direction of the voice and couldn't see a dang thing. I ran home. That was the last evening walk I took in that park. Some guy talking to himself and flogging his back with something whip-like. Clearly he had mental issues, but I didn't find him very threatening. Freed, bring me my flail. I live out in the country, more woods and fields around me than houses. There are several dirt paths through the woods that farmers use for their tractors and all during the day. I like to run on these paths because it's usually quiet and no traffic, unlike the road. During the hottest part of the summer I run at night because it's cooler outside. So one night, it had rained during the day, so all the tracks on the path were gone. I was out running around midnight. I had an uneasy feeling but didn't see anything. But then I circled around and on my second pass down a particular way, I saw my footprints, but then I saw another set of prints, bigger than mine, that hadn't been there before. Then I saw they made the turn the same way I had earlier. I cut it short that night, never saw anyone, but still, wow, I did not expect all this, lol. Thanks for the awards. I was walking one night in a pretty dark back road near my house at the time when glowing eyes on a round black body came bulleting at me. I shrieked like a child and felt super dumb when it turned out to be a big butt black lab who got to my feet and rolled over, wagging his tail and wiggling about. He belonged to someone in the neighborhood who was taking him on a walk and ran from them when he saw me. He was a big floofy boy who just wanted love. I seriously felt so embarrassed but also had a laugh. So did his owner, lol. I'll walk my dog at night and wear an LED headlamp, mostly so I can see any bear eyes glowing back at me. 20 feet down the ravine about 1/2 miles from home one night there were approximately 30 rabbits' eyes glowing and blinking back at me. Couldn't see the rabbits due to undergrowth, but the eyes, not gonna lie, it got under my skin. You ruined their meeting. Corporate won't be happy. I saw one of those clowns during all the clown hysteria. It was just some teen and his friends goofing around. but it shocked me to the core for a hot minute. Man, I miss the times where the biggest thing I was worried about was those clowns. Once walking home from the convenience store, a well-known Rottweiler stray dog came sprinting across the street in front of me. When I turned to see what he was running from, I was greeted with an angry skunk running directly into my path. Ran all the way home scared to death of getting sprayed. I feel like any time a dog is running away from something, it's like that old t-shirt that says Bomb Squad. If you see me running, try to keep up. If it's bad enough the dog has decided to run away, probably time for you to run too. I tried an electric bike my aunt had while we were visiting. I wasn't used to how abruptly it would accelerate, so when it did, I yelled for a second. My cousin was taking a video of me the whole time because I most probably would have done something to make an absolute fool out of myself, like crashing, and it would have been hilarious. So there I was, riding to the end of the street and turning back around when I noticed a lot of men holding large rocks in their hands. Their foot came by as if they're hunting someone down. We were then told to come inside immediately as someone had just taken a machete and started attacking people at a party just around the corner where we were having a party. Later that night, we replayed the video and we noticed that when the bike accelerated and I yelled, a man walking in front of me was holding a machete. He startledly whipped around and glanced at me. We're glad he didn't swing the machete. He was so close he wouldn't have missed. He matched the description of the man who hacked random and multiple people that day. That's scary AF. Someone tried to scare me with an obviously fake gun. I was startled for a microsecond, but not impressed by this butthole behavior. I saw a man walking down a street with his full penis out, and he was spinning it around like a freaking helicopter in his hand, like a set of keys attached to a bungee cord, right at zipper level. When he saw me, he crammed it back into his pants and ran away. I had the WTF expression frozen on my face for the rest of the night. I live in a country town, and I'm male, so I feel reasonably safe taking a nighttime or early morning, before sunrise, walk. If I see someone else we might say good morning evening as we pass. Never had any reason to be afraid, but one early morning I saw someone come stalking out of the trees as I walked past. It was pretty dark so I couldn't really see much except for an outline, but I had full on spidey sense get the frick out of here feeling, so I just bolted. No idea if I was actually in danger, but you gotta trust your gut on these things. Close to Halloween I went on a walk with a family member and a bunch of kids were gathered outside their houses with Halloween masks just staring at people walking by. Although, INB4 they weren't real kids, they definitely didn't stare to learn how to act. I was hanging out with a friend one day and lost track of time. When night fell I got on my bike to ride home, and about halfway home I saw a figure standing under a street lamp. Being a teenager I said frick that and went to turn around until I realized I was already too far to turn back. So I turned back around to brave the night and the figure was gone. There was no way he could have ran off in that time without me seeing him. Needless to say I hauled butt home. Maybe the dark figure saw you and bolted. When I was in middle school most school nights I had to walk about 1/10 of a mile or so to my grandparents' house to stay the night as my mom worked nights at the time. So I usually did this right as it was turning night to maximize my time at home. Curfew was nightfall, so usually it was a run. Well, at this point in my life I had never seen a coyote and always wondered if I were to get attacked, could I survive? The thought was there basically every trip, and I had no desire to find out. Well, I moved in with my dad after 8th grade, and when I was in 10th or 11th grade I was visiting my mom. I had to go grab something from my grandparents' house, and took a bicycle of a younger sibling. So I remembered all those nights before with that thought, but now I was a lot more buff than I had been back then. But I still didn't want to find out. Well, on the way back I glanced out to a pasture beside me that was overgrown. There was a figure running parallel with me, keeping pace easily. I was like holy frick it's happening, and pedaled super fast. I entered my mom's driveway and heard the creature coming across the road. Her yard was sloped downhill, so I let the bicycle coast down and I leapt off and full of adrenaline flexed with my arms in front of me and screamed let's go. It was my mom's dog. I felt relieved but also disappointed because of the adrenaline rush lol, but definitely relieved. Found out later coyotes are tiny anyway, not that I'd want to fight one. Not me, but my friend was near downtown at 3 AM on acid and was almost kidnapped. There's a lot of young female kidnappings where we're at, and because he's petite with long hair, he was mistaken as a female target. He managed to run away, but it was of course very traumatizing for him. I was walking around Bangalore, India at night by myself. I was a 20-year-old American girl on study abroad. All of a sudden, I saw a giant rat climb out from a sewer. It was bigger than I knew rats could even be. Bigger than the biggest rat depicted in movies or books. It was about the size of a small dog. I was shook. Then, out from the same sewer grate, another gigantic rat, and another, and another. About 5 or 6 dirty rats were all climbing out of the same sewer, and I was about to have to face them all on my own. I was terrified and I knew no one would ever believe me, but there was no way to get away from them or change direction. So, I pull out my phone to try and use the flashlight to scare them off. I direct the light at them and every single one looked right at me. They're dark and dirty and now they were running directly at me. But wait, I was wrong. Puppies. They weren't rats at all, but a whole litter of dirty puppies that had been hiding in the sewer together. Still gross, but also way cuter and less scary than expected. WTF India. I was walking around Bangalore, India at night by myself. I was a 20-year-old American girl on study abroad. Holy frick. Every single Indian girl I know would cringe at that. Heck, some of the guys would. A man and a woman taking drugs while I was walking my late dog. They asked me if the dog wanted some, showing the syringe. I laughed it off, but they were adamant, so I ran away. No, he's actually been sober for 2 years now. Not a walk, but I frequently run in the wee hours of the morning. Where I live is basically suburbia meets country roads. Anyways, one morning about 400 I went for a long run. About 2 miles in along a sidewalk out in the middle of nowhere next to a cow field, I saw 2 individuals, a male and female, fully dressed in what I would describe as fancy cowter clothing, standing on the sidewalk giving me the 50-yard stare. The man had no eyebrows and was wearing sunglasses, while the woman stared at me with a look I can only describe as Lady Gaga in American Horror Story. It was completely dark minus a small light above the cow field about 20 yards away. They didn't say a word. They didn't move when I was running towards them, only staring at me without moving a single facial muscle. I immediately noped and ran to the other side of the street and ran as hard as I could. As I ran past them, they both turned their torsos with the exact same facial expressions in synchrony as I ran past them. Both of them had this weird smile on their faces, almost like they knew who I was. It almost felt like they were analyzing me, or as if their eyes were seeing through me. They never said a word and never made any other movements. When I circled back an hour later, they were gone. I've never been more creeped out on a run, and I've ran past snakes, crack addicts, floods, and a man without pants. I'd bet it was some weird sex thing, and they didn't expect anyone to see. Then you came running by and froze. A chemically imbalanced bum raving at the top of his lungs, stumbling in and out of the street. He was a little bloody mess, stunk to Hades. Just me and him on the street at 4:30 AM. Usually just me and the joggers and that one soccer mom on her bike. The three stare at each other, itching to react at the first move in a steely gaze, so we finally meet, says the first person to try to establish contact. I, 33F, don't personally feel particularly unsafe walking alone at night, which is helpful because the first 2 years I lived in Los Angeles, I worked late and didn't have a car, so I had to rely on public transportation. The first month I lived in Hollywood, I was getting off the last Red Line train at Hollywood Highland at like 2 AM and saw a guy who'd just been stabbed bleeding out on the sidewalk in front of the Forever 21 near the corner. The blood was running down the stairs on the sidewalk toward the street, and a cop was just standing there all nonchalant as this dude cried into the lap of someone trying to comfort him. I wish I knew what happened to him, but when I tried looking it up, there were no reports of anything, and they just hosed off the sidewalk in the night for the morning tourists. It's like it never happened. Another time, while walking home down Highland toward Santa Monica Boulevard, I saw the guy pull a gun on one of the H that hung around the area, and he ran away when he saw me watching. That H always said hi to me after that whenever I'd see her on my night walks home. Hollywood at night is a different city. Holy crap, I've got one for this. Grew up in Japan, not too small not too big city. Worked a job that had me coming home daily at 2:04ish am daily. I preferred to walk the back street that paralleled the main street home because it felt more cozy and peaceful. Nothing of note happened until one day. I turned the corner onto the side street and about halfway down there was a young woman. She wasn't doing anything, just staring at the sky. Staring straight up, neck at a 90-degree angle, mouth slightly agape, long black hair hanging. I hesitated but decided that, since nothing weird has ever happened here before, it'd be fine. So I went to walk by. I get up next to her. It's a narrow road so not a lot of room to maneuver, and pause to look at her. She hasn't moved or reacted to me. She's just staring away. So I fight my instincts and ask her if she's okay. She doesn't react. I look up to see if she's looking at something but there's nothing there. So now I'm thinking there's something medical going on. So I reach out and touch her on the shoulder. She jolts and looks at me like she's just noticed me. I ask if she's okay and she just stammers and says sorry before hustling down the street the same way I was headed. I decided to smoke a cigarette to let some distance get between me and her. But towards the end of the street, she stops and stares at the sky again. Doesn't move for the whole 5 minutes it takes for me to finish my cig. I walk down the main street for the next couple nights. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.